Now it's my pleasure to introduce our opening plenary this morning. 3 creative and accomplished members of MRU's community. Paula Worthington, President and founder of Worthington PR Story and contract faculty here at MRU. Jasmine Palardy, founder of the Good Future Co. and a proud alumna of Mount Royal. And Sarah Nwaerondu, VP of Communications and Marketing for the Calgary Wild Football Club, and also a proud MRU alumna. They're going to dig into our theme, Strength in Community, and share a bit about how their not-so-traditional career paths have steered them all towards a passion for fostering empowerment, confidence, and a sense of belonging through community. And fair warning, they're going to get you involved. Paula, over to you.
Thanks, Naomi. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ladies.
Morning.
We did not plan to all wear some sort of animal print today, but here we are. We're supporting the wild, and we're supporting our four-legged friends. We are all connected in some manner to the MRU community. We'll start with you, Sarah. Can you share a little bit about your connection and what this MRU community has meant for you?
Yeah, I'm a Calgarian, born and raised, and so I actually attended some of the camps here as a child. And then I went to Mount Royal University. I took communications and public relations, and I graduated in 2010. And now my kids go to summer camp here. We live really close to Mount Royal, and I love coming back, so excited to be back here today.
That's great, and it's changed, I'm sure, since those early days.
Yes, it's grown a lot.
Jasmine.
Yeah, as an alumni here again, as Sarah, I was born and raised in Calgary. I've boomeranged back here a handful of times and ventured elsewhere. But like Sarah, I also graduated with the communications and public relations. I graduated a little earlier than her. I think there's a gap in our age, but I've constantly come back here. I built some of my lifelong adult friends here. I think that I learned what it was to build rituals and routines around community. There's many fantastic gathering places here on campus. And so, yeah, I've always been really grateful for what I've learned and who I've met right here. And yeah, it has evolved a lot.
That's amazing. And I first walked through the doors of Mount Royal at about the tender age of 7. In my very first piano recital at the Leacock Theatre, lots of nerves and nervousness of maybe it was Mary Had a Little Lamb that first go round. But over the years, had a lot of piano lessons there. I started and finished my first triathlon here through MRU doors, guest taught, and now I teach in the public relations program, and it's a joy to come here every single week and teach students. Tell us a little bit. I know we're not going to talk a lot about career today. We're going to talk about community, but I think for the sake we do have such a broad audience here today, is you both have had amazing careers thus far. Maybe just share with us a few highlights on the path that brought you here and what you're doing today. Jasmine?
Sure, yeah, happy to start. So, after graduating from here at Mount Royal, I stepped into the world of nonprofit and work with United Way. And bizarrely enough, as Calgary is, everyone's not just 1 or 2 degrees from each other in this city. We're like 0.5 degrees from each other. So on a lunch break one day, I bumped into an old friend, and lo and behold, in a stairwell, because the elevator was out in a building downtown, we decided to start a tech startup of all things. So that then led into the world of community building online and community building in Silicon Valley. So I spent a handful of years down in the US trying to connect Canadian founders with other Canadian founders and build community in the tech community, and then came back up here and really thought, how do I show the world why it is I came back to Calgary and what I love about this place? And it is because there's this ingenious community here of builders and creators. And I started a festival called Beakerhead, which was meant to kind of get our community of ideas and creators out into the streets and light things on fire in delightful ways, and that we did. And then from there, I was really started understanding what it's like to gather community together in person, in physical space, to define our collective ambitions and shift kind of the gravitational force of the cities that we live in. And so that's led to community building and urban futures. And so, at present, I have a Good Future collective, which is meant to do community building, community engagement, and urban futuring around how it is that we build more resilient, creative, and empowered communities and urban environments. And so as part of that, I lead a global community of kind of urban misfits from Copenhagen to Singapore to Calgary to kind of ask big questions about where we go next.
Amazing. And one follow-up to that, what does community mean to you?
Community to me means it's anchored in trust. When we feel like we're in spaces of trusted relationships, we can take risks together. And I think our world and who we are as individuals and who we are for each other require us to feel comfortable taking risks to grow together.
Sarah, tell us your journey. And you're in a very interesting place now, too, with propelling a women's sports team forward. But would love to hear your journey from when you were at Mount Royal to now.
Yeah, one of the things that drew me to Mount Royal was their internship programs that they offer. And I was lucky enough to get my last internship at the Calgary Flames and was able to get hired directly on into their marketing and their community relations department. So was able to work with a lot of different organizations in Calgary and build a lot of different community initiatives and do some really cool things with our players, our alumni, and just with the general staff. So loved working there, which has kind of propelled me to continue into sports, where I am now working with the Calgary Wild, Calgary's first pro women's soccer team. And I'm very proud to be building community initiatives. We're community focused from the ground up. We're very grassroots in a pro space. So doing lots of things to activate the community, hear what they want, and engage with them in new and in interesting ways that break down barriers, because we're now able to do that with our only women's pro sports team. So very excited about that.
Ooh. Who's been to a Wild game so far? Yeah. I've sat in the nest. It's great energy. How do you define that community, the Wild community?
I think there's a difference between community and audience. This is more like an audience where it's more one-sided. Community is very intertwined in belonging and connection. It needs to be mutually beneficial and really working together to provide a sense of belonging and inclusivity. So I would say community is all about building that trust, like Jasmine mentioned, and just building a sense of belonging together and connection.
That's great. And I think, when I look back at my own career so far, I've worked in not-for-profit and in the corporate world, and then moved agency side, and then became an entrepreneur 8 years ago. And I can tell that I was seeking out community everywhere I worked. And it's now in the rearview mirror that I realize how important that is. And it doesn't mean that you're best friends with all your colleagues necessarily, but for me, community is about values. Do we value the same things? And if we don't, can we still have good conversation? Can we still connect in other ways? Can we find ways that we can encourage and help each other grow? And so I think that idea of community in the workplace and community on your career path, wherever you might be, is so important, because it shapes you. You spend a lot of time with the people you work with, and you have the opportunity to shape others around you too. And so having that dynamic can be really important. We talked about, when we met ahead of this idea of a return on community. We think about return on investment. Jasmine, what does a return on community mean to you?
Yeah, we often in any project kind of ask what the ideal ROC is. And because often people say, how do we build community? And what they might actually be referring to is what Sarah said is an audience, right? Or a following. But community is that intertwined. It is trust. It has a sense of belonging. And so every project that we work on might have a different definition of what that return on community can look like. But to me, it's that when people start showing up with purpose, they start leaning in, they start bringing their ideas, they start yes-anding each other, and that what we actually start to see is a build of momentum around something where it goes less from a small group that's trying to architect and steward something forward, but really almost starts to be stewarded by the community itself, where they feel the shared sense of ownership or ambassadorship around what it is that you're building. And so I think in a professional setting and any projects, that's how we look at return on community. I think personally, so many of us right now, collectively, I heard a stat a handful of months ago, and it's really stuck with me, that In North America, we as individuals are spending an average of 90 minutes a day at home, more so than we did a handful of years ago. So that 90 minutes not being out and in the world is spent at home, often alone, and often online. And so to me, this return on community too is about the ability for us to explore who we are, explore our place in the world, and to kind of feel emboldened and empowered by people around us to reach out, to feel connected, to have a sense of purpose and belonging, and a bit of a backbone and willpower to kind of, lead towards self-actualization. That can sound, fairly high-reaching. But the fact is, I think when we look at return on community in our own individual lives, it's the fact that we can live our best life because we have a surrounding of people who we believe are our community that help nudge us forwards, that our wishes and ambitions go from, the notes app on our phone and into our daily lives.
And Jasmine, I'd love for you to reshare a story that you shared with Sarah and I earlier. I think it was in Copenhagen, of a weekly dinner.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And that expression of community, which it's very simple, but that idea of showing up. And I'd love just to hear and have you share your experience with that.
Yeah, and in many ways, this is something I'd love to even just bring into my own community association, and I've encouraged a lot of my friends to do the same thing. So, as I had mentioned kind of in my introduction, one of the projects I've run over the last 5 years is something called World City. And it's a global collective of urban innovators really kind of asking big questions around the futures of our cities. And so this past year, I took a small group of them, speaking of building community, and said, shed your business card, shed your tie, and we're going to go and we're going to spend some time together in these small communities, really trust building and exploring cities together. And one of the cities we explored was Copenhagen. We explored its transformation, but one thing I found is really beautiful that city has done as a collective is they said, rather than having a tagline and having all of our various civic partners kind of fall under it and try to align with brand, we're going to align with purpose. And this big question in Copenhagen that they asked a handful of years ago was, what does it look like to live a good life? Which I think is a beautiful question. And a big part of that is community. And so a habitual thing that they often do, even in the office, which I love, is usually from 12 till 2, there's long table lunches, and you all come together, and you're offline, and you connect as humans over your lunch. But one place I took all of our attendees to was an old church that had actually been taken over by a handful of artists as a community center. And every Sunday, they host Sunday supper. And they just take the wooden 8-foot long tables and they painted them different colors and they pop them up in a big long row, 3 long rows. And some local almost community garden folks do a community garden to table dinner every Sunday. And what's beautiful is that the entire community comes and they sit together and they ask people, try not to sit with someone you know. And then at the beginning of the dinner, they do an interesting icebreaker. So while we were there, the icebreaker was a staring contest with the person across the table from you. And you can't not break into laughter.
We're not going to make you do that today. We're not going to
do that
Don't
today.
worry. Yeah.
But I think these are these little tiny actions we can take that are invitations for connection. Sunday supper, whether it's a long table dinner in an abandoned church, which is super duper cool. Everyone was like, what is this thing? But it's so simple to do. And I've tried to replicate it in coming home, because connecting over a meal and connecting with your neighbors has profoundly massive effects on trust and community in our local spaces.
Yeah, I loved that example. And it can even be around your own dinner table of, can you find 5 people you find interesting and say, would you like to come together and everyone bring a dish and let's see what comes out of it. So some great ideas. Sarah, return on community when it comes to sports fans and grassroots developments and creating momentum. How does that look in your organization?
Yeah, and funny enough, at Mount Royal, I wrote my thesis on the community impact in sports teams. It's very hard to show those analytics and those numbers, but it was something that I was interested in. Probably not the best topic for me to choose, but It was near and dear to my heart, and I already had secured my job, so I was kind of, let's do something, a passion project. But yes, it lives and breathes every day in what we do and how we show up. We obviously have budgets that are being built to show that return on investment. And when you're working in community, those numbers are really hard to showcase. The analytics aren't really there. And there's certain ways that you can do it. But I think the most important thing is building that trust and that loyalty, and really having it show up in different places. So if you're out in the community and you're meeting new people, it's hard to quantify what impact that has on those people that you touched. But when they show up and they come to a game and you see them, I've had numerous people say, I've seen you out in the community, we wanted to come, or do you remember me? Like those are those magical moments that, although to my boss, I can't show the numbers and the return on investment, the return on community is a lifelong investment, because we're now introducing a girl who otherwise wasn't represented in sports, and we're bringing her out to a game so that she can see leadership on and off the pitch. And it gives her an opportunity to look forward to maybe a dream that she hadn't imagined before. So although it's a hard thing to quantify at the end of the day to your boss, and why this budget line is important to have for community investment and community engagement, you do see that long-term investment really pay off by building those relationships, building that trust, and then seeing that loyalty with those people or partners or different organizations that you work with that see the aligned value and the aligned purpose and want to continue moving forward and building that with you.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And I think that idea too of, you talk about maybe young girls going to see their first game, they see potential that maybe wasn't available to them, or they didn't think was available to them before, which I think is great. And in my line of work, we certainly work with actual neighborhoods and then a whole variety of other communities. And I think of 4 things when I think of my own participation in community is, can I share some stories? So do I feel heard? Do I feel seen? Can I also hear and listen to others? Do I feel like my authentic self? Do I feel like I can participate? And that invitation is there. And the last one, which I think is so important, is a sense of belonging. Usually with community, that first step in of stepping into the church, stepping into the stadium for the first time can feel so daunting. And I think one message that all of us want to share today is, it's okay. Step into that room. Not every room that might not be your community, but you'll gain something, you'll learn something, and then, a lot of times you will find fantastic people around you. Just quickly, what's a community you belong to, Jasmine, professionally and personally, that are important to you?
Sure, yeah. Professionally, over the last handful of years, I've come to be quite engaged with a kind of a global but also a local group of foresight experts. And so, in many of our worlds, we're asked to reimagine the future of things, but that F word means nothing without us actually asking ourselves how we think about and imagine the future. And so professionally, I've become quite intrigued around how communities collectively imagine potential futures and work towards the desired lines to the best ones. So that's been a professional community that I found to be really enriching and positively challenging. A lot of good troublemakers in that community, which is great. And personally, I'm going to get so nerdy. When I turned 30, which is a while ago now, I played my first game of Dungeons and Dragons. And since then, I've been hooked. And so we have come with our own adult friends, and we play very frequently. And now I host a small community for my children and have taught them how to play too. And it has been one of the most enriching things in my adult life, I have to say.
Sarah, how about you? A personal community and a professional community that's important to you?
Yeah, and I'm taking the personal one more literally as like community where you live, because that's one of the reasons why I moved to the community that I'm in, is there was a really strong sense of community. It felt very 1980s, like where kids were running around and having fun. And that's the type of family life that I wanted to bring to my family. So I joined the board, the Lakeview Community Association, and have been helping them organize their Community Fun Day every year. And it's a really great opportunity to bring in 500 to 800 community members to have fun. Kids can play, build those relationships. Parents can have some fun and grow their relationships as well. And then also a really fun way to highlight some of the local businesses. There's a lot of entrepreneurs in our neighborhood, so having them set up booths or do fun games that are sponsored. So a more literal use of community, which when I asked my 8-year-old daughter this morning what community meant to her, she was like, it means Lakeview. So it made me think of that. And it's because, like, what community do you live in? That's kind of her sense of community. But I thought it was perfect because that's the reason why we moved there, is there's a real strong sense of community. And on the professional side, I'm working with a number of really amazing groups, both in sport and just female-led groups. And I can't announce the name of what it is yet, but we're working to empower girls to be introduced to sport. And it doesn't necessarily need to be sport. It's more just staying active and movement. And then working on identifying the barriers for why some girls don't get involved in active sport, and then trying to identify how to keep them in sport, because there's a large shift of girls that leave sport at age 12 to 14. And so we've decided to create this kind of coalition where we're going to identify how, as a community, we can really keep those girls engaged. It helps build leadership and confidence and all of these things. But first, we have to find out why they're dropping out. So different various organizations will be working together to identify those and make an action plan forward.
I love that. And for me, professionally, I recently joined in last year or so the Entrepreneurs Organization, which is global, but the Calgary chapter is a conglomerate of Calgary entrepreneurs. And it's become a great community to me because we can all sit down and just talk about the amazing things and the challenging things that we encounter as entrepreneurs, and you can cut through all of the background information of, where you don't get well, why don't you just take a couple weeks off? Or and so there's that common bond of both success and challenge. And what I love is some of the entrepreneurs I share the most in common with. Our businesses couldn't be more different. Who knew that helping navigate an issue, it would be a steel metal manufacturer that could be helping me out. So I approach that community with such curiosity because everyone has a story around why they started their business, and I love uncovering their why. And personally, I have a small community I'm really proud of. It's a group of women, and it's interesting. Since its inception, we've gone from 25% of us being entrepreneurs to now, it's a small group, to 100% of us being entrepreneurs. And we kind of met up for dinner one night and we thought, well, this is really great. So we named ourselves the Accidental Supper Club, which sounds very formal. And we visit local restaurants in the city and we go out for a meal together. And the rules are you have to share the meal. It's always shared food. And you have to be prepared to share something you want to celebrate in your own life that's happened since the last meetup of the Accidental Supper Club. So it's a fun one for me. Now, we talked a bit earlier about that daunting, how do I join a community? Are they going to like me? What's a community you'd like to join, Sarah?
I love pickleball, but it is such an intimidating community to try and join. You have to be either really good, I just don't know how you get from enjoying it recreationally to being able to participate with all of the competitive people. Where's that community? Because I would like to join that community, the fun community.
Let's literally ask, who has pickleball?
Look, see over there.
Perfect.
Okay.
Love it.
Can you, 6 p.m.
Thursday,
Okay.
Midnapore, 6 p.m. The friendly, welcoming pickleball crew.
Yes.
Come chat with Sarah after. Let's get her pickleballing.
Thank you.
That's good. Jazz.
The one community that I really wanted to get into, and I feel like 2026, I'm going to call it in and make time for it, is mountaineering. I feel like these knees and hips need to start climbing mountains more frequently. Otherwise, I won't be able to once I actually have the time for it. So that's something, and especially women-led. I'm really looking forward to spending some time with women on the mountain, challenging ourselves.
Amazing. I feel like for a lot of sports, my best days might be behind me, but I think my best days of golf are ahead of me.
Yeah.
So I've played golf over the years, but I really want to join a golf community so that I can play more regularly and not have an excuse as to why I didn't make a tee time. So I welcome any golf communities in the room too.
I started one last year. It's called Tea Party, and it's for women that just want to golf and they don't want to keep score. They just want to have fun.
Okay, I'm there.
This is the magic of sharing our desires, because suddenly there's someone in the room from Midnapore to Tea Party that are like, come.
Maybe just to help sum it up, Jasmine, how would you define community if you could use 1 or 2 or 3 words?
Belonging, enthusiasm, and trust.
Love that. And it's right there on the board in case you missed it. Belonging, enthusiasm, and trust. Sarah, how about for you?
Well, belonging was one of my words, but I would add supported, that there's a collective feeling of support and love.
Yeah, I echo belonging. I think that's a big part of it. And I feel like the other word I'm leaning into is growing, growth. You see the enthusiasm. I have no doubt this table over here is going to open wine together one day, and so you encourage each other. You see it multiply, and that's where movements start too. And so I think there's beauty in community, and I hope that we've helped maybe instigate some communities here today.
Paula, can I say one little thing? So, we acknowledge as a society that there's a loneliness epidemic right now. We see that in North America, it spans globally. They're talking about this throughout Asia, they're talking about this throughout Europe. And this loneliness epidemic is real. We are more digitally connected and live in closer proximity to one another than we ever have before in modern times, yet we're lonelier than ever before too. And that has impacts on our health. It has impacts on our collective ability to imagine. And we know that there's a lot of fairly existential crises, a polycrisis moment right now, and big things to tackle as a society and as a community. And so when we look at generations before us, there were mechanisms. Now, a lot of these mechanisms came out of moments in time that happened in the world. We had volunteer leagues like the Elks or the Lions or the Legions. A lot of people went to faith-based communities. But nowadays, and some of those things have moved on. Also, generationally, we are this kind of different generation right now. So we need to look for mechanisms where we can come together with a bit of a routine, where we're able to invite one another in, where I can actually meet the neighbors who live beside us, go and ask for a cup of sugar. We don't do that. We Uber Eats sugar to our house versus knock on the door beside us. And I will say, it can feel awkward. Paula mentioned that before, that awkwardness of stepping into a room or stepping into that environment. I think the comfort of going internal and finding community online, which can be very active and very fulfilling, but it is passive because we don't necessarily have to put ourselves out there fully authentically and vulnerably. So my one encouragement to all of you today is, as you think about strength and community, it takes a moment to be vulnerable, to invite others in. So knock on your neighbor's door and introduce yourself, or offer or ask for that egg or that sugar. Think about where you can go, not just once, but go back again and go back again, and ask yourself, as Paula said, who am I inviting into my dinner table or at the table at work, and how am I creating some rituals and routines that can start to create a sense of community and belonging? Because we need it right now.